All right, give me 1 second.
Okay, who's gonna call it to order?
Call it to order then.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Being her son, you call it to order.
Okay, we're live now.
Good morning, everybody. I feel like it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Okay, so I know it's 11 o'clock, but it definitely feels like afternoon. I've been up so early. Hold on, just let me give you my iPad here. We appreciate everybody this morning coming out to this information session. What we're trying to do as a body is get our mind wrapped around exactly our control and all those other entities that service this community. We've tried this once before, about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and it kind of broke down. And as a result of that, there have been some concerns lately about different debris and lots and those kinds of things. And as a result of that, we are here today. And so in doing this, only thing that we're asking of those entities who speak in essence is who you are and what you do. A follow-up, I believe, will be something similar that we're trying to try to make some resolution to come to some solutions around the services that you provide. So with that being said, I would like to go ahead and get started unless there's something else need to be said from yourself, Commissioner Williams, or anybody else. Any questions?
No.
Mr. Administrator, who's up first?
Good day, Commissioners. The first department is up is our Planning and Development Department. Mr. Rob Sherman, Director Sherman.
Mr. Sherman, you got about 10 minutes, 15 minutes at most to say who you are and what you do.
I don't know. I'm gonna connect them.
All right, thank you.
Director Sherman.
Mr. Sherman, you got about 10 minutes, 15 minutes at most to say who you are and what you do.
Okay, hey, good morning, commissioners. I'm Rob Sherman. I'm the Director of Planning and Development Department. Seated in here with me are, pardon me?
Mr. Sherman, I think you have YouTube open. You might want to close the YouTube.
Okay, okay. Is Carla Delaney, the Deputy Director, Terrence Widener, Manager of Code Enforcement, and Donna Tyra, Supervisor in Code Enforcement. And what I want to present to you today are 4 of the codes that the Code Enforcement Division administers. The first code is the International Property Maintenance Code. This is an optional code. It's adopted by the Department of Community Affairs. The city adopted it years ago. We're under the 2012? 2012 edition. The code is being discussed by DCA. Will be discussed in November. They'll have the hearings to determine if they're going to adopt the 2018 code, which will be, if adopted, effective January 1, 2021. The International Property Maintenance Code provides minimum standards for how properties are to be kept. It covers everything on the inside of the structure, the outside of the structure, and the grounds. There's a process for administering the code. Whether it's driven by complaint or the inspector picks it up, or it's a complaint from a neighbor or a complaint from a tenant. If they're going inside the structure, generally it's a complaint from the tenant. The inspectors will conduct an inspection, determine if there's a code violation, notify the property owner to bring it into compliance. And then a period of time goes by, and if it's not brought into compliance, then the property owner is cited and it goes to magistrate court. And that's in a nutshell how that's enforced. Pardon me? So if there is a property that it meets the threshold for being condemned, it's dilapidated, it's uninhabitable, then it will go to, it will be processed to go through nuisance abatement, which is a state code that the city is adopted, and then it goes through a public officer hearing, and there's a process that we have to meet the guidelines provided by the state. And it's a little bit lengthy process, but to make sure all notifications are met. Once it goes through the court, the judge issues an order for demolition. The order is to the property owner to comply with what is stated in the order. In the event that the owner does not comply, the city can have the property demolished. Then once the property, we get the court order, that is passed on to environmental services and they'll pick up from there. So that's basically two codes: the International Property Maintenance Code that covers the minimum standards for the building in and out and on the grounds, and then the process for taking it through public officer when it's determined to be a nuisance. The other code would be the zoning ordinance. And that's not a single code, but it's an ordinance of codes. It's how property can be used. It covers everything from setbacks, height of fences, signs, special use permits, personal care homes, etc. If there's a violation there, then the property owner, the responsible party is told that they have to either cease operating or correct the issue, or they have to apply for the rezoning or variance to bring it into compliance. And that can be a lengthy process, up to 45 days thereabout, to get in the schedule of being on the agenda for the Planning Commission or the Board of Zoning Appeals for variance. The last code would be the nuisance code. It's somewhat of a catch-all. It's specific in what it addresses, but it also says that, let's see, where is it? The
Rob, I got a question, Rob.
okay.
The nuisance abatement code and all of the code that you're reading, I understand that entails a lot. What I like to know is exactly what your department is responsible for inspecting. A lot of that stuff goes on to another department, depending if it's eviction and other stuff. So I'm trying to get my hand around, are we doing the same work? Are we going the same property to do the same thing? I'm just trying to, and I know we won't get everything, and I think you got a list you turn in.
Okay.
I know about the codes. I just want to know basically what Terrence and Donna and your office does in the field.
Okay.
Because the services, and you heard me say this before, don't seem to be getting to where I need to get at. We keep going by and we look at abandoned house, I'll use for an example, and it end up staying that way. It don't get changed. So I'm trying to figure out how can we change it? How can we be effective? I know it takes time too. We can't walk in there and say, you're out here next week and it's gone. But in my 16 years, there's still a lot to be desired. So I know what the codes are, and I think you're on point with what you were talking about, the nuisance abatement and all that. But exactly what does code enforcement, your office, inspect, I guess a good word?
Okay. Well, that goes back to we're talking about three codes essentially, and then the state code is the fourth, and that's for the abatement. The International Property Maintenance Code, it covers everything in the structure, interior, exterior, and the grounds. Interior, we have a complaint from the tenant. The heater's not working. There are leaks in the house. The electrical, the switches are not working. It covers that. On the outside, the exterior, broken windows, the condition of the roof, boards hanging off, paint. And they inspect for all of them. And that is the code enforcement is specifically required. I mean, they inspect the structure. But Now, where there is an overlap, because the IPMC covers the grounds also, the nuisance code, which the marshal also enforces, there's an overlap there. The nuisance code can be interpreted to cover anything that is offensive, annoyance, or an inconvenience to the public. The IPMC will talk about junk, debris, et cetera, in the yard. And those two codes can overlap. If the code enforcement is at a property that, just say that there's been a complaint from a neighbor because it appears that it's being unkept and abandoned, code enforcement can go over there, inspect the structure, and they can also pick up issues that are on the grounds. Junks, somebody's left a sofa or whatever. But the marshal's department, and they'll talk about that, they also enforce nuisance on the grounds, but they don't do the structure part, if that helps.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
No, I was gonna say that helps me a lot to know that the marshal department and code enforcement do some of the same type work, and if they're gonna be working together, then we ought to really have a handle on that. But go ahead, Commissioner.
Commissioner Noah, I think I saw your hand as well. Did I?
You did.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Rob, I understand everything that you have said, and I have a very good idea on how the process works. But my concern is that we have had houses or structures that have been condemned for 4 and 5 years that are still standing. And I think what concerns me is that nobody should. I mean, it would be good if you all had a phone call to say this house next to mine needs tearing down. But when code enforcement is out there working, they see houses that need to come down. When the marshal's department are patrolling the area or in the area, they see structures that should have been down long time ago. So my question is, what is it that we could do to expedite the process?
That's a good question. So let me just bring you up to your question. So the IPMC is what is enforced. And if the structure is dilapidated, it goes to the public officer hearing. From there, once the order is issued, it goes over to environmental services that through procurement, they bid out the demolition of the structures. There is a backlog in environmental services, and I think Becky will talk about that, probably 100 to 200 structures. We go to court 4 times a year with roughly 30 cases a year. We're adding to that backlog of structures roughly 100 to 120 structures per year. What we need is a few $1 million to get it done. And that has been the reason that you see the houses that you've told us about, you've complained about, we've addressed them, we've processed them all the way through the courts. They're waiting to be demolished. There's no funding to get them demolished. And we will continue to be going through the public officer hearing for the next few years. If you ride through, especially some of the older inner city neighborhoods in 1 and 2, the houses are continuing to deteriorate, and we will continue to have to take them through the public officer process. And I know we have fiscal constraints, and that's why we have the backlog, but without the funding, with environmental services, we can't get them down.
Let me Commissioner Fenor, let me comment on that if you don't mind as well. I think as Commissioner Fenor, I know several times you've mentioned this, and I hope we don't get bogged down with this one because we got to get through some more. I'm gonna go to Commissioner Clark next. Then we're gonna try to let him finish it up and do what we need to do. But I think also, Commissioner Fenoy, you have been advocating for quite some time now to the potential backlog of these houses. And talking the other day to Environmental Services, I had a house that had just torn down that had been on the list for 3 years. And so we have to find a way to do that. I think you have been mentioning about trying to go ahead and bond about $15 million and get all these structures down. So out of this conversation, some point in the very near future, we may very well get to that point. Because I think we do gonna have to do that because if just because they've tagged them, they've been to court and everything else, if there's not the resource to take them down, it doesn't mean nothing at the end of the day to that neighborhood. So that's where we are to try to get that done. Commissioner Clark, we try to keep it brief and we want to try to keep moving if we can.
Yes, I only have 2 short questions. Mr. Sherman, how many millions would you say that we need to do what we need to do with the abandoned properties?
I would think you would ask Environmental Services that they got all the backlog of houses.
Yeah. If you could hold that question, if you would, till Environmental Services comes up, they can tell you the number there that are backlogs. How many houses do we have that are in the process, roughly? 100 to 150?
Yeah.
We have approximately 150 properties in the process of getting ready to go through the public officer hearing. So those, once they go through the public officer, they will roll over into Environmental Services. I don't have a number for you, but we've got a ways to go. But I've got to say this, that over the past years since this started in '99, we've done probably 1,000 structures or more. So progress is being made. It's just that we have to do it with the funding that's available to us.
Okay, thank you.
Go, you see another question, Commissioner?
Yeah, one quick question, and I think either one can answer this. How many code enforcement officers do we have on staff and in the field at this particular time?
In code enforcement, we have 9 and we have 11 positions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Williams, you gonna let us keep moving?
I've got one.
Oh boy, y'all will get us stuck. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Bobby Williams.
Hey, Rod,
Yes, sir.
one of the things I look at, when I call and it seems like you guys get bogged down with a house or something or what have you, or I might call in and be something dealing with somebody like that. Guy parks big trucks in his yard or what have you. Speed of action. What do you think can speed up the speed of action? Do we need to come up with some other clerk or court position where you can take those guys and go ahead and get them prosecuted or what have you? Because it seems like it's just a drawn out process.
Commissioner Williams, let me answer that for you if you don't mind, because I can't answer it. But that's the process that we're going to talk about the next meeting, how we expedite all these processes. Because we'll try to solve them today. And that was not the intent. The intent was to address, but that is legitimate. But all of about the next meeting is all about how do we expedite all these processes.
All right, go ahead.
All right, Commissioner Williams, you gonna let us move on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Move on. Let me go to my next person because we're not gonna get past Rob Sherman.
Yes,
But
right.
no, I think, am I muted? I think this is important, and I think everybody asks legitimate questions, and those things gonna come up. This is a very serious issue that we're dealing with. My question goes back to these properties owned by somebody. We acting as if we don't know where they come from and just fell out of the sky, and we're gonna try to figure out a way to demolish those properties. But there's a property we talked about here on Davis Street, I think, and Walden Drive at the corner, where they hadn't paid tax in probably 2 years, but they still own the property. So the commission just asked a question about how do we expedite this? There's got to be something put in place to let people know you can't dump your property on the city and we gonna accept it and we gonna tear it down for you, whatever. Something's got to happen. So if you own property, you got to be responsible. So I mean, I guess that'll come up, at a later time. But
let me answer that for you, Commissioner Williams. what normally happens with these properties, from my experience and being on the land bank as well, if I have a piece of property, a secondary piece of property, and it's dilapidated, I don't want it. In many ways, when I get that demolition notice, I mean, I get that what do you call it notice? Condemnation notice. That's going to condemn it, and especially if I hadn't paid any taxes on it, compound it, because you got some people who even pay taxes on it still because they feel they're a tax-paying citizen. But at the end, they're still not going to do anything to the property. So what happened at some point in time, code enforcement ends up taking it to court. And so at that particular time, the owner doesn't respond, or the owner has no interest in the property, even though they may be paying the taxes or not. And they go ahead and the city takes it down still because it is a eyesore to the community. And that's how we end up with so many of them, because the owners had in fact walked away from them. You are right, but they don't want them. That may go back to Commissioner Bobby Williams. I don't know what we'd be able to do to tie a tax or something to my residents as a result of being a hazard to the city. And that's the plan that we're going to be looking at too in the future, that I think he has found from other cities and what impact that'll have. But people have literally walked away from the properties, and that's how the city ended up tearing it down.
Well,
So we're not going to try to solve them today, though, you know?
No, and we're not solving it. And I thank you for being on the land bank, and I thank you for understanding whatever issues you came across on the land bank. I get that, but I get also, if you park your car on the street and leave it and it's registered in your name, then something gonna happen to you. Somebody gonna come to your house and issue something. So whether it be on their property, and like you said, that's a part we're gonna have to get to, but it's just too much to just let it go by. I done heard this song that Rob singing for 16 years. And it's a good song. But the point is, it ain't getting no better. And to sit here and try to say, well, we're going to fix it next time, we need to talk about these issues so we can get an understanding. My problem is you got code enforcement, you got the landfill, you got the marshal's office, you got engineering, cutting grass. And I see more people cutting grass and working than I ever seen in my life. But it ain't getting much better. And then you got to call it in. I'm not gonna be calling in much longer, but I'm gonna be complaining as long as I'm here. But I'm not gonna be calling in. We got all those entities that's out there working, and people still don't see the results.
And that's why we're trying to get all this up under one umbrella and look at that commission. That's the point of being in the day. We're not trying to solve it all today, because ultimately you got to have those structures down, and that's what we're trying to get done. Let me go. Who's the Mr. Sherman, were you wrapping up about the nuisance? Were you through with that process?
But one comment about the property Commissioner Williams just brought up over on Walden at the corner. That's another example. We have I'm gonna hurry. We have an order for it. We don't, and it's in the process, but we don't have the funding for it.
Okay.
And that covers us. That covers us.
All right, thank you. Who's our next, Mr. Administrator?
The next department, the next group will be the marshal's office.
All right, bring him on in. They already in, right? There's been 3 that were supposed to be in the room already.
Yes, sir. Give me just a second. I'm grabbing them. Scott Peebles is coming in.
Okay.
Mr. Administrator.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How many departments do you have this morning? How many?
We have about 4 more for you, sir.
After this 3? Okay.
That's why go ahead.
He just smiling. He must have gotten a raise or something. You're an administrator must have gotten a raise. I ain't seen it smile that much in a long time, man.
All right, Mr. Bobby, we getting ready to get started. We got Mr. Scott, what is it, Chief Deputy? What is it?
Yes, sir, Chief Deputy Marshal.
Chief Deputy, Peoples, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us exactly what you're doing.
I'm Scott Peebles. I'm the Chief Deputy of the Richmond County Marshal's Office, and I'm just here to brief you on our flow and what it is that we're primarily responsible for. I think you do have our flow chart in front of you, so I'm going to be very brief and let you follow up with questions. There's 3 ways we typically get complaints, and that is directly to us through a call from the public, whether it's also through 311 or we can get the call from another agency, or it can be an officer-initiated case. Typically, the ordinances that we are responsible for enforcement, if you just kind of want to generalize it, relate mostly around litter, trash, and illegal dumping. So I think in the past, those are the ordinances that the body, the commission, has given us the authority to enforce. Additionally, as Mr. Sherman stated, we also do cross over a little bit with nuisance properties. The primary focus, though, is on litter, dumping, scrap tires, things of that nature that create blight.
Is that pretty much it?
I mean, that's primarily the focus. As you're aware, we do, I think we're focusing on the blight issue, so I didn't get into the security functions we serve and the processing of papers. Evictions sometimes do run into this realm. When there's an eviction, there's a set out and the property stays on the curb. We've put a process in place to fix that, to where we follow up on all evictions now. And so within 48 hours, anything left has to be gone, and we ensure that that happens.
Okay. Commissioner Marion Williams?
Yeah, thank you. Scott, I got a couple of questions. I guess my first question is that the commission allotted more funds to the Marshal Department to help code enforcement do some of the stuff that they was doing. Now, the Marshal always had litter. Always been in the litter department. You mentioned about some tires, but what else do y'all do when it comes to code enforcement than just litter?
So that's where the nuisance property code comes in, and we do have some authority in that realm, and it's kind of a catch-all, as Mr. Sherman stated. So what we've done is we started the chronic nuisance enforcement team, and basically what we're doing is just bringing all of the players to the table, from code enforcement to sheriff's office, ESD, anyone who potentially could have a stake in a property that is a chronic property where there's a nuisance, so that when we go into an area, we can address it all at once, rather than we go out and we say, hey, we dealt with this issue, but now you guys need to look at this issue. We kind of do it as a team, and we've taken that approach to try and streamline it and make it more efficient. And we've seen some success. It's just started. We started down in Marion Homes, and we've gotten some very positive feedback from the neighbors there. And so it's something that I think is going to continue for us.
The other thing is the patrol of that. How many patrol for nuisance and abatement type stuff versus the other stuff? Because I think y'all still do warrants and stuff.
Well, we mostly do evictions. We do warrants as it relates to magistrate court if they issue a warrant that relates to a case that we are working, but we don't go out and serve arrest warrants, if that's what you're asking.
No, not arrest warrants, but through the courts. My understanding that you even serve Columbia County as well, right?
No, sir. I mean, if there's a case in Richmond County where the magistrate issues a summons of some sort, then we could go to Columbia County to serve that summons.
Shouldn't that be passed off? Just ask the question to me, because I'm thinking that if it's in Columbia County, we would come through the court, it ought to be passed off to Columbia County, who got officers and to handle that, versus your equipment and your manpower going to an area in Columbia County when we can pass it off.
So basically, if we get it, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So if we get something that's very simple and only is going to take a few minutes, then we'll do that. But if it's, obviously if it's something, we're going to look at it and see which process is most efficient. If it's more efficient for us to go ahead and handle it and knock it out, and it doesn't take a lot of time, and maybe our officers are already going to that area anyway, on the border of the county, then we'll do that.
Well, nuisance and abatement is what Rob Sherman is handling as well. And so that's two agencies doing the same thing. In my opinion, when you don't specify what those things are, Rob just shared that anything to do with the overgrown, abandonment, litter on the property, And I don't think y'all go inside, but he even covered the interior of a property. But that seemed to be two services, two agencies doing the same services when you're about nuisance and abatement. But
So sorry, if I can just clarify how we try and stay in our lanes on that is if, for instance, if we get a call or we see a property that just had junk piled up all over it, then that's something that we will use the nuisance code on. But if it's something like an abandoned property that's overgrown that really relates to International Property Maintenance Code, then we bring Rob's team in because that's something that is more in their wheelhouse as it relates to how the codes are stating who has the authority to enforce it. I don't know if that helps you or not, but.
Thank you, Mr. Peoples. I don't see another hand. We'll get back with you. We can bring the next person. Thank you, Chief Deputy.
Yes, sir.
But there is a list, though, of being that each department has a list of their duties, right?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Who's next, then, Mr. Administrator?
The Environmental Services Department.
All right, sir. Let me know when I can't see everybody on these. Is Ms. Becky the representative?
Becky's on.
No, Mark will be here.
And just make sure you have your YouTube turned off. I'm looking for Mark. I don't see Mark in the waiting room.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, ma'am. I see somebody that's labeled Augusta 2020, but I don't know who that is.
I don't either.
Well, Ms. Becky, are you prepared to get the interim deputy, right?
Yes.
Interim deputy, Ms. Becky.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about exactly what do you all do in terms of code enforcement, and how many officers do you have?
Right, we have 3 positions for code enforcement here, and primarily the ordinance that we enforce is the 422, which is the lot ordinance, and that ordinance provides us the opportunity to inspect. We provide a notice of violation. We are required to wait a remedy period, 14 days. And then we're a little different than the other departments because we can actually take action. We can go in and cut the grass, clean up the litter, remove debris, and then assess those charges to the owner's property tax statement. So we're a little bit different than the other ones in that we can give notice, wait a remedy period, and then take action.
So when what are those timelines, if you don't mind?
We get the call from 311. We try to inspect within 5 working days. After the inspection, we provide that notice within that 5 working days. So within the time of the complaint, we are trying to get the property inspected and the notice to go out within 10 days.
So what you do in terms of lots, you do strictly lots. No, if it has a structure on it, then you don't approach it.
We do unoccupied locations, and they are houses with nobody that is living there at the time, or that is in very bad repair and is dilapidated. So yes, sir, we do structures, but we do private properties.
Okay. So we was also talking about demolition. Are you all responsible for demolition as well?
Yes, sir, we are. Our department is. That's underneath Deputy Director Lonnie Wimberly.
Is he here?
He is not, but I do have some information that
okay.
That we asked how many are in city works, how many backlogged demolitions are waiting, and they're over 300. And that's about what it was last year at this time as well. So we're definitely underfunded to get those properties down because we can only tear down with the budget that we have 40 to 50, maybe 60, depending upon the size of and the amount of time it takes for the demolition. So yes, sir, there is a definite backlog.
2 questions I have. Do you have, how far does that backlog go to your knowledge? Yeah. And also, what is the cost, what is the average cost factor to demo a house?
Right. I have seen houses all the way back, I think, to 2018.
Okay.
I think that was that's the last time I have looked at that information. The average cost, I would say, is about $7,500.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any question?
Yeah, I got several questions, Commissioner.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, there's Mark.
Right. I would still have.
Mark, please make sure you turn off your YouTube if you haven't already.
I think that was
Thank you.
That's the last time I have looked at that information. The average cost, I would say, is about $7,500.
Well, the delay reaction or something?
Yeah.
Radio
Yeah,
time.
the YouTube is a delay, so.
They ought to delay on this public. Commissioner Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to go back to the abandoned lots that the Environmental Service cleans up. When we tear down a structure and we don't have anyone to claim it, when I say claim it, if we tear down another house and there's another vacant lot, then the Environmental Services will go in to clean that lot and then charge the property owner. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And if it's not reported, if nobody complains about the lot, then how often do those lots get cleaned?
We do sweeps, and by sweep, I mean we have our code enforcement officers when they are out addressing a citizen complaint. We also have areas where a neighborhood that we choose, and they actually ride up and down the roads and they address those things in the neighborhood, like litter or illegal dumping, or if they find an abandoned car. But yes, they measure the grass, so they are doing that quite regularly. And how often do we cut them? We don't have the budget to cut every couple of weeks or every month.
No, how often do you cut? Not what you budget. I want to know how often do you cut? Once a month, once a year, once every 5 years. Just how often do you cut?
We cut it once, and we go back through maybe twice a year.
Okay, yeah. The other side of that is you got private contractors that we hire to cut these properties. Is that right? I mean, the landfill don't have a crew itself doing that. We got private contractors that's going in and doing these cuts. Is that right?
That's right.
That's correct. That is the process we've been using for some time now.
How many crews and how much is that expense is, you know? How many crews do we have? We got 1 crew, 2 crews, 5?
I think we alternate between 2 and 3 crews when we have some extra money. So primarily there's three crews, and they run $2,800, $3,000 a week.
Yeah.
What is your budget? That's what he asked. What is your budget to cut the lots? You have a budget for that?
Yes, sir, we do. It's $320,000, and through this next budget, we put in for some more money. I tried to get it up to $400,000 for next year.
Okay. And how many lots will that get you? Well, I guess it's not how many, it's times. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry. Anybody else have another, Commissioner Benoit?
Yes. You know, the ground downtown is very fertile, and we got a lot of Johnson grass downtown, and a lot of times that grass don't get cut, or the lots don't get cut until the grass is 4, 5, 6 feet tall.
Yes, sir.
There are times when the inspector, and I'm assuming this what happens when if I call in, a citizen call in a complaint about 1516 Laney Walker, and the inspector will come out and look at 1516 Laney Walker, but 1517, 1518, and 1519 is just as bad as 1516, but unless somebody calls in a complaint, nothing gets done until somebody does. So it seems to me that if when the inspectors come out to inspect a a piece of property, if they see if they see the surrounding property is in need of cutting also, they would go ahead and add that to the list.
They should be doing that. They should be doing that.
And then I've seen where they cut half a lot. There's a house on 12th Street. There's a lot on 12th Street right in front of Perry Avenue. We have been complaining about that piece of property. I know ever since I've been on the commission. They came out and cut it about a month ago, but they only cut half the lot and left the other half uncut.
I don't know why they did that.
Well,
could be equipment. I'm not sure. We'll look into that. I think that you gave us that address and I passed that along to Mr. Wimberly. I'm not quite sure what happened with that, but we can find out.
Again, somebody came out to cut it, but they only cut half. And then a lot of the contractors don't clean it up behind themselves. A lot of times the property looks worse after it's been cut than it did before it was cut.
Ms. Beckett, your contracts, do they have to clean up behind themselves in the contracts that you provide?
Right. So they'll place the debris that they remove from the lot to the right of way. And we have different crews that'll go out and get it. The hauler will get some of it if it's bagged. And we also have crews to go pick up limbs or tires. So yes, that's why it's placed at the right of way for us to remove what they take off that property.
Yeah, but if you as a homeowner, if I'm a homeowner, if I pay somebody to cut my shrubbery or my limbs, I've got to get that person to move it. Now, what I'm hearing you saying, if the contractor who we paying to go in there and put stuff out, then our haulers get it. So there's another problem right there, where if the hauler is getting paid to cut it, he needs to haul it off as well. I mean, he's getting paid to do that, because the Joe Q taxpayer can't just do that and put it out front, because it's going to create a problem for environmental services for the garbage collection. The other thing is, and Becky, you and I talked several times on Crazy Drive, where they'll cut around what they call shrubbery, which is there's no house, there's nobody there, and the stuff is very small, very young. They could cut it all down, but they'll go around it as if they're saving some shrubbery or some kind. And then it makes the property look overgrown. It makes the property look really bad. You can't see the depth of the property because of the vegetation, hits your eyes before the back of the property does. So we got some issues over there that we really need to get straightened out. I don't want to confuse people thinking that, everything is just fine with $300,000 for cutting grass, and we only cut it once, maybe twice a year.
Yeah, that's due to the amount of vacant lots within the county that are not maintained. We are overwhelmed with the amount of properties that the owners do not care for. It's always been a numbers game, and each year we do get better. Each year we tweak it. I understand about the tree of the shrubbery and the property. The current bid has a size limitation that the contractor doesn't cut anything over 1 inch diameter. We are revising that. We're looking at that. We're looking at possibly even having, if we continue to increase the budget, to even do more, because we see that as well. We see that as a problem as well.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes, thank you. I have a real issue with the overgrown properties that are in need of grass cutting and cleaning and what have you. And they will be grown so high that the for sale sign from a real estate company that's sitting in the middle of the lot can barely be seen. Is there any way that we can get the real estate companies to be responsible to the owners to get the lots cut and cleaned up? It seems like they would want to. Is there anything we can do about that?
You know, we do work with the property management companies because they are paid by that owner to maintain that property. As far as real estate, we've not gone into that yet. It's definitely something that we can look into.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am, Ms. Becky, Mr. Mihal.
Thank you.
I don't see another hand, so we're going to go to the next three, Mr. Administrator.
Next group is the Land Bank and ACD. We have them together.
Land Bank, and who now?
Housing Community Development.
Okay, thank you. Are those the last two?
And then after that, we have Keep Augusta Beautiful, just to kind of talk about their plans.
So what about, so how does the warden, and what about also your recreation department does some things as well, doesn't it?
We were focused on the.
Let's go with what you got for right now.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mihal and Ms. Becky, thank you very much.
Okay,
thank you.
very good.
Thank you. Commissioner Fennoy.
Yes, sir.
I'm about to tell my colleagues on you.
What you gonna tell them?
That you come out here and threaten me by cutting you off.
Yeah, the mayor at least will let me speak.
Are they in yet?
No, Jeff, are you bringing them in?
Who's next?
Sean Edwards and Hawthorne Welcher together.
Okay.
I see Mr. Edwards. Mr. Edwards, first thing, tell us.
The mayor will let me speak.
Oh, that's real delay in name. Mr. Edwards, first tell exactly the land bank and exactly when it comes to properties, what you do, and just tell us how many properties you have in the land bank and who those properties belong to.
The role of the Augusta, Georgia Land Bank is to take tax delinquent properties, which can include blighted structures, overgrown lots, vacant or abandoned homes, but tax delinquent. And based on our intergovernment agreement with Richmond County, no less than 2 years tax delinquent. We can take those properties through a judicial rim foreclosure process, which will allow a responsible property owner, be them an adjacent property owner, primary residence that wants to buy that lot to expand their yard, a small investor that wants to create affordable housing in our community, or an organization that works to do services. It allows them to be able to buy that property through the foreclosure process, which pays the pass-through taxes, pays any fees that are owed, be them charged by environmental services, as a result of a demolition, as a result of cutting grass. And it also brings money into the coffer for the land bank to continue its operations. We work to eliminate blight in that way, but we are restricted to there being tax delinquency on the parcel before we can get engaged with moving forward with foreclosing on that property. So that is our condition. When it comes to our inventory, the land bank holds approximately 300 plus parcels. We hold those for city departments. The majority of that being with housing and community development currently, but we have held for engineering for the High Park project. We currently hold one for utilities, but we also hold for nonprofit organizations, primarily our CHODOs, the community housing development organizations that work throughout the Augusta Richmond County area. So there are a few properties that are in inventory that are for them as well.
So with the ones when you said with the CHODOs, because Mr. Welcher is here, do you know how many there is for the CHODOs and who's responsible for the maintenance and upkeep on those properties?
In each instance, city department, nonprofit, even for-profit, because we've begun the process of also working with the group down in the Old Town area. Of course, each entity that will receive those properties is responsible for maintaining.
Okay. Do you have anything in place currently that is legal binding to make sure that they do that, and if not, there's some consequences?
Yes, sir. We recently approved and recently past couple of months The land bank approved a new set of policies and procedures that now includes what's called a depository agreement. It is a document that is officially signed between the land bank and the head of any organizational department that holds them to a set of understandings. So one, that if there's a structure on the property, that it would be insured, that the lot would be maintained and cut. And it also sets a timeline for how long the land bank will hold the property, because it's not our intent to keep property off the tax roll. The land bank's properties do not generate taxes for the county. We want to move those properties out of our name so that they can get developed.
So when do you, all of these entities, go back to HCD, the Chodos and others, including yourself, Land Bank.
Yes,
has everybody signed the agreement? Because you said recently approved agreement. So has all the parties signed the agreement at this particular time?
We're still working to get those agreements signed.
Okay. So do you foresee yourself having those agreements signed for the next 30 to 60 days at best?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Commissioner Williams, go ahead.
Man, you took your time, Mr. Chairman, asking your questions, and you know you want to get out of here. You're saying, and nobody asked you to hurry up and nothing else. So I don't want no slack about how many questions I got and how long I'm gonna ask my question, because I got some serious issue with the land bank and probably HD and housing development as well. But Sean, I want to go back. First of all, you talked about responsible people who acquire these properties. Once you acquire a piece of property and put it in a land bank, you still ought to be responsible. Is that right?
When we foreclose on a piece of property, it is typically initiated by a request. So it is not very often, except for when the city transfers a property to us. There's a request to be able to foreclose on that property. And so our ambition is to quickly move it out of our name. Pricing is already negotiated on the front end. Timeline for what will be done with the property is reviewed by our board. In fact, even we go through a developer's agreement. Is a 6-point strategy that we review that is similar to what HCD does with its developers to ensure that we're going to be able to have that project happen. So we
the land bank been holding some product for what's the longer length of time, I guess would be the best way to ask this question. That land bank been holding property.
That varies. I would say there have been, and I'm gonna go to your question, that there have been properties that have sat in that still sit in the land bank for over a 10-year period.
Over how long?
10.
10?
Yes, sir. There are properties that still have sat there that have been transferred for the city that have sat there for over 10 years.
Okay, over 10 years. Whether the city owns it, whoever owns it, and it doesn't matter to me, because of the property is affecting the neighborhood and it's not dilapidated, not been taken care of. Somebody need to take care of that property, whether it's in the land bank or whether it belongs to a private person on the tax base. But for 10 years, I think it's a long time for a piece of property to sit in a terrible condition.
Yes, sir.
Now we know the land bank acquires property through different means. But if you are the keeper of that property, and you just said recently y'all just signed something, and I'm glad to know y'all recently signed something, because before somebody raises the issue, you know, that there wasn't none. It was just, oh well, we got it. That's no good in this community, because I think we're doing our taxpayer a disservice to hold stuff and let it sit there dilapidated and going down. Even at the tax sales now, I don't know whether that's in your wheelhouse or not, but when you buy a piece of property and you can't go on it, whether it be the land bank or anybody else, it ought to be, and I guess as a commission need to do this, put something in place where you got to at least clean it up and address the blighted part if you don't rebuild the structure. Because if I had it for 10 years setting up, then I put it in the land bank and said for another 10 years, it's really not doing any good. The rodents are steady multiplying, the grass is steady growing, the neighborhood steady going down. So we're trying to get our hands around this, at least I am trying to get my hands around this as to how we've been doing business.
Yes, sir. And if I could interject right there, it is the matter that brought us before the commission, properties on Brown Road, that led to the creation of this document. You were very clear with us then that the land bank just doesn't need to hold property for folks. They're saying, well, that's ours and it's for us to develop, but there needs to be rules. At that time, the properties had been held for 8 years. So
Well,
it was, I'm sorry, so go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, old school like I am, if I'm keeping your children for you, I'm responsible for them.
Yes, sir.
But if I got your car, if I borrow your car, I'm responsible for it.
Yes,
if you leave anything with me, it's in my hand, I'm responsible. I feel the same way about the land bank. The land bank, and not just the land bank, but anything is in your custody where it belongs to somebody else. But you agreed and you accepted those in. That's your responsibility to make sure that whoever supposed to pay you to clean it up or pay you to maintain it, is your responsibility to do that. You just can't leave it. But that's just my old school opinion on that. The other thing is, if the land bank hold property for 10 years, do the land bank hold property for someone or for someone to come in to put it back on the tax book?
Well, so to that 10-year point, that's not typical. When properties have been transferred from the city, they have always been transferred with a specific use or an agreement. So those things have not been areas where the land bank as a body has been able to supersede its understanding of why a property was transferred. So that's not the norm, but that is one of the extremes that answered your question. Secondly, if you would allow me just to be able to elaborate a little bit on the responsibility end. We do work to hold each party accountable, and all departments have entered into agreements with the land bank dating back to the 90s that they're responsible for the inventory under their control despite the properties being in the land bank's name. Now, I know to your point, and it's a valid point, there still has to be a greater level of accountability on the deliverable. When the grass grows, somebody needs to cut it. Thus the reason we developed that agreement to say, okay, if such and such department, organization, nonprofit, whomever, doesn't get to it, it puts us in a position to be able to go ahead and take care of it and then seek reimbursement. That's delicate because we have an extremely limited working budget and would prefer that the organizations be responsible themselves. And most of them are, many of them are. But in those moments where we have to supersede someone's authority, we need to have something in writing that allows for that. And we're working through the steps to get that in place. Because if we incur that cost, we have to be responsible for everything that takes place. If we were to take care of a blighted structure, we've got to make sure that it meets standards of not only removing it, taking care of the meter, making sure that the lot is seeded and strawed afterward, similar to what happened when we lost the Dent's Funeral Home. So city moved forward with procurement to get that done, and we cut the check because it was in our inventory despite what happened to lose the building. We were responsible. And we just wanted to have those agreements signed prior to doing that.
And I agree with that, but we can't hold Joe Q. citizen again responsible for not cleaning their property up when we have an agency within this government that's doing likewise. And then we say, well, I'm gonna make you do it. But everybody, it's gotta be a rule, but the rule gotta fit everybody. So there's no knock on you.
Yes, let me ask, what's his name, this IT guy? Ask him, are we online? Because I just got a text, somebody said they don't see us online. Are we online? Are we live?
Yes, sir. It's on the city's homepage. There's a link on the homepage.
Okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
No, I'm good. I mean, I just I got those points.
Okay, Mr. Welcher, how many properties do you have in the land bank?
Currently, ACD has 213 parcels that belong to us, and we continue to place these parcels in the land bank until needed for development activities within one of our 9 development nodes. Then we take the necessary parcel out of the land bank and we transfer it accordingly to said developer or general contractor for the purpose of providing affordable housing, workforce housing, or any type of commercial activity. Now, I think one thing that's very important We definitely have a fluid relationship with the land bank. And to date, we care for all of our 213 parcels in the following 4 ways. One, we have the grass and weed and shrubbery services cut every 2 weeks. There's demolition, clearance, and asbestos removal of dilapidated structures where necessary. And basically what we do is we do an assessment on a monthly basis. And if we have, typically of 213 parcels, around 23 to 25 are structures. So our inspectors do go out and ride. And if they get to a point where they are just sort of to a point of non-repair, then we make a decision to go ahead and to demolish and clear and remove the asbestos and lead as well. The third way that we care for all of our parcels out of our coffers that we pay for is we maintain liability insurance on all parcels. As well as the fourth way that we care for all of our parcels is restoration of historic structures where feasible. And of course, this is not something that we do all the time, but i.e. 1420 Twig Street, the Johnson House, that is an example of a property that we had in the land bank, and we've moved to restore that property. Now, for full transparency, beginning back in March of 2020, due to COVID and other challenges, our procured lawn service company, I don't want to call their name, but procured through Mrs. Sam's office, they began to show delays in their biweekly cutting schedule. So we immediately got on them and kept talking to them. What happened was one of the principals of that particular company had to move away to Tennessee to take care of his grandmother, which we originally found out. But what that led us to do was to move to dissolve that contract through procurement. And as of today, as of last Monday, we did solicit the service for another grass, weed, shrubbery company. So we anticipate being back on schedule and cutting these properties probably hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, 2 questions. Number one, have you signed an agreement yet that with the land bank? I know you told us about all your cleaning, but have you signed the agreement?
I'm not sure. If not, then I mean, there's no reason why there's an impediment
Okay.
not that it hasn't been signed.
Okay. Hey, one more question. That was the first one. I'll come back to the next one. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you. Good morning, Director Welcher. You used you made a statement. You said that your inspectors went out and inspected the property. How many inspectors do you have on your staff?
We have 2 inspectors and 1 project construction specialist.
Okay, thank you.
My question was going to be, how long? What's the earliest that you had a property in the land bank? How far back?
I would probably say 10 years.
10 years. And is that several or 1 or 2 pieces?
No, that's several properties. You approved the Lane Walker revitalization project. You approved it back in 2008, and we began acquiring properties back in 2010.
Okay. Commissioner Fanoa, go ahead.
Mr. Welcher.
Yes, sir.
You say you all have over 200 properties in the land bank?
Yes, sir.
Friends over America's Voice News made this gem.
And you're in the process of hiring getting a new vendor to cut those properties?
Yes, sir. I mean, we've maintained them in immaculate way, in my opinion, for the last 10 years. You have not had any issues with properties that we've had, because it would definitely be a deterrent to what we're trying to do, which is, revitalize and transform the neighborhood back into a thriving community.
Okay.
We take full responsibility for the properties that we acquire and keep in the land bank as a good partner.
So Immaculate Conception is not your property?
Immaculate Conception is our property.
Okay, all right.
And once again, due to COVID and due to, I can't just go out.
I just asked the question. I just asked the question.
May I finish, Commissioner?
Yes, go ahead. I thought you had finished. Go ahead.
And well, before COVID, about how often were you all cutting these properties?
Every 2 weeks on a schedule.
All right, that's great. I'm finished now.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Williams, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Welcher. The property that you got and you've been maintaining up until something happened to your construction person. that do the maintenance work. I just need to know why are your property in the land bank? If y'all taking care of them, y'all, because this is not about how many, this is about the overgrown vegetation. And my problem in the land bank ain't about how many you got and how long they've been there. It's the overgrown vegetation and how bad our city look. So if you're maintaining those properties, what advantage is it to have it in the land bank versus just maintaining those properties like you've been doing?
Well, I mean, I think, the purpose of the land bank, it speaks to a fluid relationship that speaks to strategic land purchase for the development of affordable houses. And I think you have developers and contractors alike that work through the land bank who seek and come for property. And it's a good place for us to hold that property for future development. And, they seek neighborhood transformation, and we seek the same thing as well. And typically, from a city standpoint, that is a good place to bank the property as opposed to the city being liable and holding that property every day. So I think in Sean's direction in dealing with developers and in the recruitment of property, people who come and seek those type things, he understands what our development plan is. So it's a good place for, that's the purpose of the land bank. That's why it was created, to help in strategic land purchase and future development. So that's the reason why.
Okay, well, I mean, I heard that the HDC had all these properties over there and y'all wasn't taking care of it and blase. I know from being in this city, from not just riding by, that a lot of these lots are very small. Back in the day when we allowed people to build on less than enough room to put a house on, some of these structures not even big enough to even have a driveway in them. And it takes more than one property to make enough property, enough land to put some on. So it's been a struggle. But if someone comes in and want to build a house, and you got 200 something properties, are y'all waiting for someone to build 10 houses versus somebody building one house? How did that work?
It varies. I mean, typically what we do is we're currently working in 9 different development areas. So, you're working, of course, I give you 2. You know about Heritage Pine, you know about Twig Street, you know about Holly Street and those things. So with our properties, we know specifically exactly what type of development is going to go where. So we're not necessarily waiting for developers to come in. We do have a list of developers and contractors. Let me give you an example. On Twig Street, we currently have those 2 quarters right there on Twig Street, known as McQueen Courts. We're also building on Nicholas Street and Boyd Lane. So those properties are still in the land bank today. But if you go on Boyd Lane, you'll see where we're constructing 5 workforce houses right now. And they'll stay in the land bank, which we have 3 contracts already on 5 of those properties. So they'll stay in the name of the land bank until they're constructed, and then we'll transfer them or sell them out of the land bank to individual owners.
Listen, okay, go ahead.
No, I'm finished.
I'm gonna go to Sean. I don't want to back up. I want to keep moving forward. If my colleagues don't have no questions, because I want to go to the next one. Thank y'all very much. Mr. Minister, can you bring in Evan Joseph? Warren Joseph.
Thank y'all, gentlemen.
Good count.
Commissioner, Evan Joseph team was not included today. We were talking about blight. Their role is more or less providing personnel to assist with the cleanup. So we didn't have him prepared to talk today.
I spoke with him, and I
he's on here.
Provide,
okay.
And I had spoken with him about being here.
Okay.
Are we done with HCD and land bank?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm gonna put y'all back in or let y'all go.
Thank y'all.
Warren Joseph.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Yes, sir. You're not central. You probably need to get center. You're in the corner.
Good?
Yes, that's better. That's better. Tell us who you are and how you assist throughout the government in terms of the manpower you bring to the table. And
okay.
Who you assist.
Okay. So I think it was last week we sent a printout to the administrator's office, sort of like a breakdown of what the details do and and who we provide service to. In a nutshell, we provide laborers to inmate labor to 7 city departments and 2 outside agencies, which are DOT and Board of Education. So the printout, I'm not sure if you got a copy of it, but it outlines the details that work with the different departments. So engineering maintenance, we have, they got 11 inmate work crews, Parks and Recs 10, solid waste 2, central service 1, the Augusta Canal Utilities has 1, animal service 1, fire department 1, and like I said, the 2 contractors, DOT has 2, and Board of Education 1. So we don't necessarily tell these different departments where to send the inmates to. We just provide them the labor, and the way the system is set up. For example, the average citizen would call 311, makes the complaint or the issue, and then 311 would generate a work order, and they will send it to the prospective department. So if it's a drain issue, it will go directly to engineering maintenance, and then engineering maintenance would decide which one of the crews we allocated for them, which one is going to take care of that particular job or work order. So that's how it's set up. Every now and again, we'll get a call issue, maybe a safety issue, and then we'll send a crew directly to that area or areas. But the way the system is set up, each department that has the details, they dictate where they go on a daily basis, Monday through Friday.
Okay, so in terms of the manpower here that you provide, are these departments compensating your department? How does that work?
The only departments that compensate us, we have 2 enterprise fund with solid waste. They have 2 crews. So they do compensate us, and utilities does compensate us. The other departments are from the general fund. So
What about the Canal? Did you say the Canal Authority?
yes, sir. They do compensate us.
They do. Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
And then obviously the contractor, DOT and Board of Education, they actually pay for the officer's salary.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else have a question for the warden? Go ahead, Commissioner Williams, Marion Williams. You're muted, Commissioner Marion. Warden Joseph.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Marion, we've got a question for you.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, are we duplicating services and how we can be effective in changing the mindset, I guess, of our community with the labor that you got and the labor that we have in our city. Now, recreation department does what kind of details? Not what kind. Grass cutting and other things that they do with your inmate crews through the recreation department. They're just on their grounds or what?
Right. They cover all the parks, the cemeteries, Riverwalk. All of those are done by the inmates.
Okay, and that's through recreation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, and we're trying to get a handle on, at least I'm trying to get a handle on all of the agencies that are doing work. We see people cutting grass, especially the inmates. We thinking it's just one department. We don't know it's recreation doing it. People who pass by just see the inmates doing it. So I'm just trying to figure out, are we doing duplicate services somewhere? Recreation, how many inmates you send out there?
You mean for recreation, Commissioner? How many teams?
Can you repeat that, Commissioner Williams?
How many inmates do you send to recreation on a daily basis?
Okay, so recreation, we have assigned 10 details. Now, it fluctuates on a daily basis. So
10 details, that's 10 officers?
Right, each details takes from 5 to 6 inmates. That's okay. We at full capacity.
Okay. That helps me. That helps me because I didn't realize it was 10 details. I mean, I see details working, but I don't know how many there are.
Right.
That helps me understand a little bit better.
Right. Now, each day, Commissioner, they don't have the full 10 because some days we have the inmates in classes. Some days the officers are out, but they assign 10 details. Engineering maintenance is assigned 11. And like I said, each detail ranges from 5 to 6, sometimes 8 inmates.
Okay, and I guess recreation will handle the equipment through,
Yes,
through the city, but they handle all the equipment, right?
Yes, sir. We don't provide equipment. Each department take care of all the equipment, including the vans that the inmates ride.
Okay, all right.
Commissioner Clark?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Warden, you're talking about compensation. What type and what is the amount of monetary compensation are you being repaid for the inmate labor?
Right. Typically, the way it's set up, Commissioner, the said department just pay for the officer's salary. That's the extent of it. They also take care of all of the equipment, like I said, including the van, all the weed eaters, your riding lawnmowers, your blowers, your chainsaws. They take care of all of that, and we just give them the inmate labor.
Okay, is the officer's salary, is that per day that is being used, or is that set up on how's that set up?
You said officer's salary?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, each officer or detail officers have an annual salary is right around $35,000 a year.
Okay,
That's average. And then
okay, each department is paying that annual salary?
Not all the departments.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fennoy?
Yeah, Warden Joseph, how has COVID affected your operation with inmate labor?
Could you hear Warden Joseph? Like he's going. Mr. Jeff, can you help us there?
Yes, sir. It looks like he's stuck. He's got another connection. I think
Okay.
he's back.
Did you hear the question, Warden Joseph? Warden Joseph.
He's connecting his audio.
Yeah.
There he is.
I'm sorry, we lost the audio again.
Commissioner Fennoy, go ahead again.
Yes, how has the virus affected your operation?
It's been challenging, Commissioner, but I'm knocking wood. We haven't gotten any positive inmates. We've gotten, I think the last count, we had 8 positive staff, and they stayed home quarantined. And luckily, I think they felt sick at home and they went and got tested. But knocking wood again, no positive inmates. Initially, when we first got wind of the pandemic back in March, we had to close down from March to May because we were still trying to get a handle on what was going on. And we started back up in June, and we got some things in place, I think, that has really helped us as far as sanitation. We've been wearing masks since March. Everyone, before you come in the building, you can't come in here without a mask. We check our temperatures daily, including myself. And before you step in the building, you got to wipe your feet in a bleach liquid solution. And so we got some things in place, and then we felt that because of those things, that's why we've been so fortunate.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Warden Joseph. Thank you, sir. Mr. Administrator.
Yes, sir.
I think you did text me to let me know that Deputy McDowell will address something from the Recreation Department.
Yes,
I think
sir.
the good part we need to address is that the staff that they have in the Recreation Department itself, what role do they play in all of this here? So you can bring him on if he's not already in the room.
We can add him. Jeff, you would add it. Also, I just wanted to clarify the question about the salary. The salary for RCC officers is charged to the department that uses the detail, and it's the entire salary. It's not by days, the annual salary, as Evan Joseph stated.
Thank you.
Are we done with Mr. Joseph?
Yes, sir, we are, sir.
Okay.
Mr. McDowell, you're muted. Deputy McDowell, talk to us about the Recreation Department, the staff that you don't have to necessarily talk about the staff that you use in terms of inmate labor, but you can talk about the direct staff.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I guess good afternoon now, commissioners. The warden kind of stole a lot of our thunder as it related to how we operate, I guess, in totality. So I won't reiterate what he said about inmate crews, but we have those crews, we have 10 assigned. Of course, that fluctuate, but we have roughly 17 to 18 full-time maintenance staff workers, and that we're responsible for about 40 to 45 sites. That's include our park areas, that includes Riverwalk, that includes our cemeteries, and then we have a few other areas that we control the mediums in. For example, Henry Street is one that comes to mind. We're responsible for making sure maintaining the grass and the landscape in those particular areas. So from a maintenance standpoint, from a grass cutting standpoint, the parks, the cemeteries are our big ones. Riverwalk is our big one. Augusta Commons, and then we have a few areas that we maintain in terms of the medium.
And how many staffers that was overall?
17, 18 maintenance guys that we have that actually have to perform this work. Of course, that's supplemented with the inmate crews that we have. So on average, you have about 7 to 8 per day inmate crews that's designated towards grass cutting efforts. And then we have the other 2 crews that typically work on repairing of equipment, working on restroom details and cleaning the restrooms and that sort of thing.
We do know, I think Warden Joseph did mention just now that he does have some inmates who, by the you all's decree, that works in the cemetery. How many staff directly do you have that actually works in do you know off the top of your head?
That works in the cemeteries?
Yes,
so in our 3 cemeteries, we average about 6 full-time staff members per cemetery. And then sometimes that fluctuate, they kind of cover the 3 cemeteries that we have to maintain.
Okay. Any questions, anybody? Any of my other colleagues? Any questions, anyone? I'm gonna start charging now. Somebody need to say something. Guess nobody want to. I guess everybody want to pay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy McDowell.
Okay.
In my mind, I think it's been very successful from an introductory perspective in terms of what you are and what you do. Mr. Administrator, what I would like for you to go out is that at our very next meeting, per Commissioner Williams' question much earlier, based on the service that you're currently providing, what do you think can expedite that process? What are some of the things that can cut down the timeline, whether that's even right down to the court system? Because I know all these things go to the court and some of them are pushed out back by the judges, but directly from what you do on a day-to-day basis, there's time components tied to it. What could be done to expedite those processes? That's what we'll know from all these departments today that who addressed us. And anything else, my colleagues, you can add to that. All right, go ahead.
Mr. Hassan, I found some articles.
No, I'm sorry.
I found some articles on Blythe and what they're doing in other communities. I had sent it to Ms. Bonner and I had her to send it out to you guys. So I would appreciate it if you guys would read it. I'm pushing the Blythe tax, so that's something we can talk about in the future, but just want you all to be aware of that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Fenoy.
Yes. I think that we are really missing what the problem is. We do have a lot of houses that needs to be torn down, and we have a lot of vacant lots that need to be cut. But I see the solution is that when you take houses down, put a house back on now. That would relieve the city's responsibility of maintaining that property, because if they abandon the houses, they're not gonna pay to have the yard cut on a regular basis. By doing this, we take grass cutting responsibility off the citizens, and then we add taxes to the houses that's being developed. I think the way it's set up now, we're just spinning our wheels, and until we look at a program that's gonna include development as well as demolition, then we're gonna continue to have this problem. Most of the houses, most of the lots that need cutting, we may cut them 2 at the most 3 times a year. Imagine what your yard would look like if it's only get cut 2-3 times a year. Something else that we didn't look at that we need to look at, I believe, is engineering and our right of ways, especially when you look at the easement that exists behind the neighborhoods in Apple Valley, that exists behind the neighborhoods in Eastview. A lot of times this grass gets to be 5, 6, 7 feet tall before anybody cuts it. And again, because it's that Johnson grass, you could cut it today and 2 weeks from now, it'd be back up there. So we need to come up with a comprehensive plan. And we also need to look at our retention ponds. Our retention.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Some of our retention ponds are badly overgrown and they're not being cut on a regular basis. And it creates havoc for the people that live in the area around a retention pond. And that's all.
I'm sorry. Let me address some of those things, Commissioner. And I'll come to you next, Commissioner Marion Williams. Absolutely, I think that's the ultimate goal, is to try to create something rebuilding homes. I don't know where you build them fast enough, but you still can start that process. We can definitely have that conversation, Commissioner. I don't have a problem with that. I absolutely agree about engineering service should have been there, and I take responsibility for that because I actually meant to call Dr. Malik just like I called Deputy Warren, and it just escaped me because Hamid would be able to also tell us about the retention ponds and their strategy on that. So we definitely put him on at our next meeting to give us insight on that. And it goes back to what I said to you much earlier, to do any of this in a very comprehensive manner, we're going to have to bite the bullet and potentially do what you suggested to us in terms of doing a bonding source. But like you said, we'll be very deliberate as to what that looked like. And some of these, even some of these lots that we may have, may very well end up having to find a way to offer them to the public if some of them want to even immediately build homes and things like that. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. Commissioner Marion Williams?
Well, I agree with everything I heard. The problem I've got, though, this only happened in inner city and the south, the east side of this community. This really ain't citywide now. You can find something, but the base of this stuff is in the inner city, where people have been allowed to do some things and let go. The other things, Commissioner Bernard talked about retention pond. When they had the goats out there cleaning the retention pond, and we closed that program down called the Animal Lovers. And I'm an animal lover. I got 3 dogs and I got a female pregnant. She's gonna have about 7, 8 more puppies in another day or so. So it's not about not loving animals. The point is that people have been using those goats all over the country, all over the world almost. And then because we are closed-minded in this city, we couldn't get the people to keep the goats. And other people called our animal control about what program we were doing because they saw the good program. Because certain people didn't like it, didn't want it. We were buying feed to feed goats and then expect them to eat the vegetation. That's what they do. We had a dog to get in there and kill one of the goats. But we didn't stop with that. So we really don't want to clean this community up. We really keep talking about what we don't have. We want an excuse to say why we're not doing it. We want an excuse to keep it like it is. But if we were progressive, we were open-minded, we could have done some things a long time ago that we have not done. So the other thing, Commissioner, you say you didn't call engineering. Yeah, but if you had to get to Ms. Bonner and let her do the calling, everybody that need to be here would have been here.
Yeah, it slipped my mind, Commissioner. I agree.
Well, if you get to the clerk, and I've been telling you that for.
Well, your clerk or the commission clerk?
Either one of them. it would have got done though. But when you step in and you gonna handle it, it kind of changes things. So that's all I gotta say.
All right, Commissioner, I accept my fault. That's all you can do. I apologize, Commissioner, for Noah too, for cutting them off much earlier. I appreciate my colleagues coming out today. I don't see any other hand. Mr. Administrator, would you like to say something in closing?
No, sir. I will just add that we appreciate the opportunity to present the different departments. We are taking the feedback and going back to the departments and finding better solutions on addressing blight in our community. And we hear you all's concerns and hear the community concerns about blight. And we do want to make some changes, and we are going to make some changes.
Let me say this to you, Mr. Administrator, and I definitely appreciate your tenacity in getting the information that some of the floor charts you got to us today. But I want you to do something with me if you don't mind. As long as we're doing this here, we kind of work together on it, because we started down this road about 1.5, 2 years ago, and I was designated by the commission to get involved with this. And I might have had 1 meeting, 2 meetings at best. And before I knew it, it had been taken in another direction. And here we are 2 years later, almost back in the same place. So and me working together on it and trying to make sure we're on the same page, that we can push it forward. Either the commission said, well, I'm not interested anymore, then I can deal with that too. But we tried a couple of years ago. Before I knew it, it was off and running. It was another different direction. And I don't want that to happen this time, because I agree, like my colleagues, and as yourself agree, is a very important matter, and we cannot continue to kick this can down the road. So once again, I thank my colleagues for being here today, and everybody have a blessed and successful weekend. Take care.
Thank you.